Hi everyone, welcome back. I've been on holiday and now I'm ready to get on with finishing this textile landscape. So this is what it looks like at the moment. I'll put a link somewhere, I don't know, but there'll be a link to go back to see how I got this far. So this is like the update and then all the embellishing techniques that are going to happen on top. So I finished stitching all of the trees, stitching all of the bluebell patches, the path. So that's as far as I can get it with just layering on pieces of fabric and doing it on the machine. If I show you the reference picture now, so my path and my trees and my bluebell patches as well. My bluebells are a little bit more purpley. So we are going to do all of the embellishment and that's going to use up any of these problems here even. I just want to draw your attention to this stitch here. So this going across here is a plain zigzag. This is like a fancy stitch on the sewing machine and I thought it worked really well for the beginning parts of putting in little green patches in places just to break it up a bit. Obviously using a sewing machine I can't just stitch loads and loads of lines down this way because I can't really do free motion on my sewing machine. I would say number one thing to do when you're going to do a landscape is see how much work the sewing machine can do for you. So this is my sewing machine. It's just a modern Singer Brilliance. Wasn't very expensive, and I've talked about that in another video, why I don't buy expensive machines, because I destroy them. So there we go. But this has programmable stitches on it here, so it's really worth looking through to see if you've got a machine that's similar to this, seeing what you can use for different things. So in the previous video I did a stone wall and I was able to use some different stitches that made it look a bit like a stone wall, and I know one of them was like this one here with the blocks on it, and then I think the other one was like that, and weirdly stitched across on this I think it's Throster's Waist silk, it really looks like a stone wall. And then the one that I used for those stems was that one, number 72. I would say you can try using leaves if you want to. I've never had much luck using leaves other than like as a decorative hem on something. They're just too regular. You know, by all means use them if you want to. But there's interesting things like this. If you stitch this the right way up, you know, that could be like grass leaves. I nearly was going to do that one. Then I realised I'd have to be like starting and stopping, going up and down that way, which would be quite hard. But there's all different sorts of things that you can use, that you don't just have to do zigzag or intermittent zigzag or running stitch or whatever. If you've got a machine like this, have a good look and see what you can use and utilise, and you'll find by piecing together different stitches you can get some really, really good effects. If you haven't got a machine like this and you've literally just got, you know, straight stitch and zigzag, that's absolutely fine. Most of my early landscapes were done with a machine just like that, and to be honest, I wouldn't say I've got much more of an advantage with a machine like this. So before we get started on actually doing something, I just wanted to have a little word about materials. So far all I've used on my piece of work is rayon thread, which was Madeira machine rayon thread, which gives it that slight sheen on there. And then I actually ended up using some quilting thread to try and get this right colour, because I thought that was the right kind of colour for the stalks and I wanted it to show up. So I used quilting thread for that, and it's hand quilting thread, but it ran through fine. And then just ordinary like dressmaking, you know, sewing thread, whatever you would put in your machine. That's pretty much all I used. I've done a couple of bits of layering to try and get some of the depth in here. I've used a little bit of organza. I found this quilting cotton that works really, really well for leaf shapes in the background. I really love the effect of that. It's given it a lot of depth. But now we really do need to do some other bits and pieces. So using my photo as a guide for some of the colours and my piece of work as well, I've tried to choose things that most people can either get hold of or they already have in their collection of stuff if you're a, you know, keen sewist or craft person. whatever maker. But I've got a selection here of threads. So I've got some DMC embroidery silks, which I thought were great. Really good colour match, and actually they fall perfectly between this photograph, which is too blue, and the work, which is too pink, so that will work fine. And then I've got some anchor tapestry wool. Also somewhere I've bought a whole load of cotton perle. God knows where it is, but anyway, there's one of them. So I've got some of that as well, so you can see straight away what I'll be able to do is vary the thicknesses. And then I've got the same in like greens. Then I also have my collection of stuff that has taken years to collect. Different bits and pieces from all over the place, from wool shops, and friends sent me things. Sometimes you can get, if you know people that are spinners and weavers and stuff, sometimes they'll be kind enough to do selections like this. And in this one there is this one, that might be suitable for some texture for the bluebells. There's only that one. You can collect Angelina fibre. This is the throatless waist I was talking about that made the wall in the background, which you can barely see, but it's there. There's quite a lot of like these sort of variegated wools and things. There's some weird like felted stuff that has been hand dyed. So yes, that gives you quite the idea. So you get the gist anyway. You can collect all different bits and pieces, and I tend to collect in naturalistic colours, but if that's not your thing, I'm going to do some more kind of out there stuff, you know, a bit brighter colours and stuff. Towards the end of the summer I might do sort of like a beachy sunset, you know. I've got a beautiful watercolour that I did years ago, so I might have a go at recreating that in fabric. So how are we going to embellish this? Well, we're going to use a combination of pieces of fabric, organza mostly, and that will make things look nice and sort of hazy at the background and build up some more of this kind of featheriness across here. But that's not enough, and I don't fancy cutting out loads and loads of leaves. So what I'm going to do with all the things that I've shown you is do a combination of layering fabric and embroidery, and then some embroidery tricks. So I've got this book here, which if you can get hold of a copy, I think you probably, if you're interested in doing this kind of textile landscape, I think you would find some of the things in here really, really helpful. So it's by Sue Newhouse, hand embroidered country scenes, and it was published 1997. It covers all sorts of painting fabric, different things you can use for scale and stuff, which is really, really useful. And she even goes into, right at the beginning here, if you're doing very small embroideries, different stitches when you put them together to make them look like different flowers. So here she's talking a buttonhole bar, and you've got lavender, bluebell, grass and corn doing all the same thing. And then here you've got little tufting stitches, we've got cornflower, dandelion. So how to look at stitches in a different way. The only one we're going to do is the buttonhole bar. I'm going to show you how to do that. Here's an embroidered bluebell wood by Jean Fell. And she's used, says the shafts of sunlight consist of 2 lengths of yellow chiffon, and masses of stiffened threads and buttonhole bar bluebells are used to fill in the foreground area. And I actually think it's lovely. I think it's really well constructed and so much work, but I actually think it needs more bluebells in it. I'm not quite sure how you would do that, but anyway. So I'm going to do also some lazy daisy stitch on here for leaves, and I'll be using DMC and see how easy it is to stitch through the fabric as well. This will be okay, but this might be a bit of a pain. I need to finish putting in some of these branches. I've got some of them, but I haven't got the main branches that go back across. Then I'll be moving on to doing the leaves and that, but then actually that's the least important part of this picture. The big important bit is this. I'll show you how to do some buttonhole bar, some embroidery on here, some all different bits and pieces, and approaching it in a different way. While I've got the sewing machine set up with the brown thread in, I thought I'd show you how to do these bits here. I couldn't put any more fabric on here if I wanted to. I think it would just be too much. Now, one of the things I found with doing it on the machine is it's quite hard to do a wobbly line. It's funny, we spend the whole time trying to do straight lines on the sewing machine. When it comes to something like this, you really want a little bit more natural. So I'm going to just use a water soluble marker, and so just make sure you don't iron it, and it'll come out with water. So I'm just going to draw on a line. It'll give me a little guideline. You probably can't even see that because it's against the blue. What I'm doing is I'm just putting in like a little bit around here, but I'm doing it onto this blue, and I'll probably stitch over this green organza, but I'll put the mark underneath because I can't draw on that. In my original video of how to do this, I drew a straight line all the way around the size of the canvas that I'm going to be using, so there's no point in doing anything over that line. And then I want to do another one that comes out here right into all of this. At the moment I've got quite a lot of blue on here. Let's see if I can do it anywhere where you could see. Let's put a little branch in here. So all I'll do is I'll set it on a sort of small zigzag and stitch all the way across it, and then turn around and come back. So then onto the machine. So I've got this threaded up with Madeira rayon, so you just get it where you want it to go. And I've got another bit of fabric pinned here, so I'll just fold that out the way like that. And I've got my tension set on about 1.5, so that I don't get any weird colours on the back, although I think I've got the back bobbin is a dark green, so it doesn't matter. To make it look thicker at the bottom, because chunks are usually a little bit thicker at the bottom than at the top, I'll just go backwards a bit with that. Still not convinced my stitch is the right width, so I'm going to take that down again and try that. Right, I think that'll do. It looks quite sharp and black, and I tried to do it wobbly. It's really hard to do wobbly. And I'll just snip that off. I'll just work across all the bits that I drew in, and then this will be the last bit that I do with the machine, I think. So let's try and get this one a bit more bendy. So that's what it looks like. It's filled it in a bit. Now I have actually tried doing it with just a straight stitch before. You can do that, and you can certainly do it for the marking out of the shape, but it means that the stitch is very dense, and you have to do quite a lot of filling in, and somehow it doesn't look as, I don't know, tree-like. Whereas with the zigzag, where it's not a straight line, if somehow it just is more convincing. Well, I think it is anyway. So this one, because I've just adjusted the stitch length, I'm just going to leave it on the small and then go bigger. It doesn't really matter which way around you do it. So now I'm going to change the stitch length back again. I'm probably going to keep flipping these out the way, I think. See, this is what it looks like now, and I hope you notice that you can stitch backwards and then stitch off a little bit and then come forwards and so on and so forth. That's how I got that, and you can see it starts to look really branchy. And then this piece is going to go like this, and I should have said something about this earlier on actually. If you can see all of these loose threads, these are off the fabric. Normally I'd be going mad trying to trim all of these off. Leave them alone. They really, really help add to the twigginess, the texture, the jumble, you know, making it feel like trees. Now I need to go and get some starch. Okay, we are on my brand new camera today, so apologies if I don't get it quite right, or if I sound a bit different or whatever, but it's just as well because we're doing something really, really fiddly. I'm hoping that you can see this if I put my hand. I think we might have to zoom in a bit more actually. So I have got a thread stretched all the way around. This is my kitchen chair upside down, and I tied it on last night, and I tried to tie it on tightly. It was starched. It should have shrunk a bit, but it's not very happy. So it's a bit droopy. So I've got some masking tape here, and I'm just going to tape the thread in place so it doesn't slip down the legs, because the legs are kind of splayed. So I've got a green thread, which is the stalk that's stretched around the chair, and then I've looped it on, and I literally just did a loop, and then I slide them up together, and then I'll just keep looping them, and you make a buttonhole bar. So the longer you make it, the more like a different flowers it will look. If you want to do a short flower, you only need to do it 2 or 3 times. If you want to do a bluebell, you want to do between 6 and 9 times, or until you get bored. Let me see if you can see that better. This is tapestry wool. This is about 24 inches long. Take the end, make a loop, put the thread through the loop. So you're going to make a first loop on here like that. Okay, and then you just keep going. So you loop this in one hand, so make a loop under the thread, and then pull this through, and then pull it tight and slide it along to stop there. And then you do the same thing again. You just keep going, and then we'll hold these in place with starch in a minute. So then to do the next one, you just carry the same thread along this green stalk thread, and you just do one loop as though you were going to slide it all the way up. Just choose where you want to start your next flower. So I'm going to start mine here. Pull it tight. So if you pull back on this one, on the coloured one, back towards you, it's not going to slide anymore that way. So just keep the tension on it. Just on the first one you should be fine. Slide it through the loop. Then we can start off the next flower, and then when we've finished doing all the knotting, I will paint starch on these, let it dry, and then I'll snip right at the top of the flower here, and then I'll cut these bits off, just those bits off. And then the starch will be enough to hold it, it's not going to come undone. And just mix up whatever you've got. So I've got different colours of tapestry wool, I've got embroidery thread, I've got some rayon, all of those things. I'll try doing different things for stalks and then knotting different things on. Okay, I have done loads and I just wanted to show you, I've got some thicker thread on here, and what I've done is I've tied it round on this bit so it won't fall, so there's quite a lot to pull against. And then I've got a string of tapestry wool and embroidery thread that are very similar in colour, and I actually thought I'd add a bit of dimension. And then this is actually 3 different colours, I think you can just about tell. And I'm hoping that if I knot round this I'll get a bit of a bigger flower, but also when I come to cut it apart that I can use the extra bits as, what do you call them, leaves. So I thought I'd just try and show you again. So you make a loop like that, and you put that over, make sure the tail part is pointing away from you, and then put both of the tails through the loop, and then pull it, and then make sure it's really tight. This will twist and turn round, but there's nothing you can do about that. So then you do another loop by putting your finger in like that, just pulling it, pull it all towards you, and pull down at the same time. You're basically wrapping the threads in a buttonhole stitch. This is exactly how you would do buttonholes on a, blouse or a jacket or something. If you could just visualise wrapping this thread in it, so we're wrapping it in this purpley blue colour. So now if I show you how I've been fixing them, originally if it was just embroidery thread I would use starch, just painted on, but because I was using some marlet, which is this rayon, and it's so silky, it was just, I could, even when I was knotting it on, it was coming undone. I decided to modify my fixing method. So I'm using tacky glue. This is not sponsored, just happens to be what I've got. You could use any sort of PVA based glue. I was putting a little dot at either end. Now I know this dries clear, but it also dries sort of hard and plasticky, which is not what we want. Put a little dot at either end where the starting and finishing goes on. And then I'm sorry if you don't like getting stuff on your hands. I don't either. Get yourself a wet microfiber duster or wet cloth of some description. Get your hand damp first, and then just sort of tap it into the ends. Just tap it in, and then obviously you can wipe your fingers straight away. And then what I've been doing is on the inside of this, I've been sort of folding it round and just blotting off the excess but squishing it in at the same time. And that should be more than enough. And I should have just said, make as many as you can. If you really get fed up after the number that you've made in an hour, then call it a day. That's plenty, okay? Right, so the bluebells are drying. So we're going to make some bluebell leaves. Also, because these need to dry before we do anything else. So once all these bits are done and they're sitting there glued, we can get on with doing some embroidery and bits and pieces, and then we can stick these on when they're ready. So I've got a piece of paper here that I just folded in half a few times and left it so that you can open it here. It means I'll be able to slit through these. And then I've got a combination of tapestry wool and cotton perle in a few different colours, which I thought most sort of looked like the bluebell leaves. Here's the reference photo. This is the colour we're going for. And so some of them are in shadow, some of them have got the light on them. So I thought that was a good combination of colours. And we're just literally going to wrap this round. Doesn't matter if it overlaps, doesn't have to be neat, nothing. Right, so we've run out there. So trim off the cotton perle, just get a bit of masking tape and just hold that in place like that. So that's the open end there. And now I need to thread up a needle and we're going to stitch this into clumps. I think I'm going to use this dark green because it happens to be here. So this is the one we're using. I'm just going to thread up a needle. Hopefully live on camera it's not going to be a disaster. And I suggest you make this double, give it a bit of strength. And let's start at this end. So I'm literally going to put the needle in, scoop it underneath as many as you want. So about 1/4 of an inch worth, I think. And then we're going to stitch round that a couple of times in a sort of a back stitch. And then pull that tight and then stitch round again. That's where the knot is, and this is going to anchor everything. Can you see? And then when you're happy with that tuft, stitch back a little bit, like halfway through it, into the next group that you want, and then go round that a few times as well. This has to be done like this. It's a bit of an annoying process, but it's much quicker than trying to do tufts in any other way. So you can see it's going into like little groupy bits now, just there. And then there'll be like little bits all the way along as we stitch through it. Okay, so I've finished stitching the tufty leaves and stuff. And I would just say a couple of things. One, doesn't it look like fringing? You can see how fringing's made only a lot neater. And two, don't use a sharp needle because I really stuck it in myself, and also it makes it harder to stitch across the paper because you can almost stitch through the paper with the sharp needle. So don't do that. I've used a cross stitch needle, and I also used the same cotton perle for the second half of it. So that's it there. When you've done that, finish off the last stitch, which I did. Cut a little tail, so we've got it roughly stitched on absolutely fine there. And it's just sitting on the paper, it's not through the paper. With some PVA like glue, whatever you've got, you're going to go over every single sort of wrapped knot, I suppose you'd call it. And then by the time we've got to the end, it should have started to set a bit. And we'll just dab it on and then squish it on with a damp cloth, exactly like we did for the bluebells. This is to just keep it all together when we want to use it. So now that's not going to dry like hard and clear or shiny. It should be properly mooshed in. So I need to let that dry, and then when it's dry I'm going to put the scissors in like this and we're going to snip along the top. I don't think there's any other bits that need making like this. I'll go and have a think about it. See you later. So now this all should be dry. these are all the bluebells. So I'm just going to carefully take all of the tape off first. And it looks a right jumble, doesn't it? But don't worry. So this has got multiple loops where it was wound round the chairs. So the first thing to do is make sure you've got some little snippy scissors and take off any of the long bits that we used for wrapping. The first thing we've got to do is take off the excess, we'll call it purple for argument's sake. So we're starting to just get the flowers on the stem. Okay, so now I've got something that looks a bit like that. So this is one flower here, and what we want to do is we want to keep one bit of green attached and the other bit of green to be leaves, but I don't know if this is going to work because it depends how high up I glued. I think it'll be alright because it'll just fill in the thing. So there's one flower. I'll have to either go through and glue them all again or rethink this, because what I thought I could do was trim just that bit off, so then you've got some leaves. Completely forgetting that you've got to cut it off, so then you might as well not put them in there. So we'll just leave them in for now. So just to give you a little bit of an idea before we do any more cutting, if I bring the piece of work over and have something to put them in, they're so easy to lose. So you'll see already we've got two different sizes here. There's some even smaller than this. So these are going to go back here. So I would suggest putting them somewhere where you can see them. So these are going here. There's a little clump there, and then these will be more forwards, so that you can see we've got small and then much thicker, and that's where all the thicker ones will go nearer the front. So already you can see it's starting to build up a little bit of texture, and then the back bit is just going to be stitched, and we'll just do some stitches, and I'll show you those in a minute. And then we're going to have some tufts as well, and then I'm going to use a big pair of scissors to just cut through. Remember how we left that bit of paper open? And we're just going to gently pop this off. It's stuck a little, but not a huge amount. And then all we need to do is cut these apart. There's one little tufty bit. So a nice big clump there makes a lot of sense. And then we might want something a bit smaller here or coming out onto the path. And then you can cut into this so that it's not as regular. And then if you start putting in bluebells as well. So I think what I will go and do is I will go and cut apart everything else that needs cutting apart and put it all in my little box and keep it safe. And then just do a little review on if I need to make anything else, because if I do, I can do it now and it should be dry by the time I've done some embroidery. Right, so I've finished cutting apart all of the bluebells that we made, and I've just spent a couple of minutes just arranging them in size order to show you. And actually it's pretty good that I did different stems throughout, because that really helped decide where they should go. And I just wanted to show you these. It's one of the tiniest ones, and I hope you can see, if maybe if you just look there, how easy that would be to make it look like lavender. And then some of these different ones like this would be really easy to make that look like larkspur with the flowers, and obviously you can do it really tall. If you glue them slightly, you can bend them. There's one or two that are insanely long, so I've already sort of bent it a little bit. So those are the 6 different sizes we've ended up with, and a really nice mix of colours. It's just pure coincidence that the ones closest to the front are like variegated with the different colours in, which is probably way more realistic, but those are my least favourite at the moment, but it really doesn't matter. So I'm just going to pop these all in here for now. So I'm going to put those on one side carefully. We're going to do some embroidery. We're going to do some stuff up on the trees. I'm going to do lazy daisy stitches. To start with, all I'm going to do is roughly stitch across in different places to just anchor some of these bits down, some of the last bits with pins in. So rather than just doing a little catch stitch, I'm actually going to do a couple of lazy daisy stitches. So I've got some cotton perlé. I have put a knot in the back. Honestly, with the number of layers of fabric on here, it really doesn't matter. I'm using a short, sharp needle. So if I bring up the thread, it needs to be sharp to get through all these layers. Now, a lazy daisy stitch is quite straightforward. You bring up the thread and then you put the needle back in the same hole you came up, and then you do a little stitch. So I don't know if you can see my needle there, with the thread underneath it. So like that, if I pull it, I can't pull the thread any further because my needle is in the way. Then pull the loop round, and even I can't see that very clearly, so you're not going to be able to. And then just do a little catch stitch over the loop. That's a lazy daisy stitch. I have done a video years ago where you can see it a bit more clearly. I have done a few embroidery videos. So I'm just going to do a couple more on this just to hold it in place. I'm probably going to try and naturalise it a bit, so I don't know if you can see my needle here. It's coming part way up through the fabric, and I'm going to put it back where it came up, and then I'm going to have it coming off the edge of the fabric here, and then putting the thread round. And I need to just do that in odd places on here, and then I will be putting on some more organza. And I'm going to cut it slightly on the bias like this. Right, so then what I will do with a sort of reference to this, I will put some more bits on, like going across, and stitch some leaves. Although looking at this, most of these tree trunks are naked. I think it's where I put these background bits in. I think I've just got this piece here to work on, and then I think I was planning on doing the rest of it in embroidery, so it's more the other side in the middle for that bit. Right, so I've done some more stitching. You can see this a little bit more clearly here, but now I'm going to just do some of the long-awaited bluebells. I'm just going to do an impression of some bluebells, so I'm going to choose this bit here, put a knot in the end of the thread. I'm just going to do some little stitches. These don't have to be anything. They can be slightly wonky, they can go across lines of stitching, and I'm not going to uniformly cover all of this fabric in this way. I shall just do patches here and there. So I've just swapped back on to doing some more of the trees, and I just wanted to show you how this has been done under here, and you can see some stitching on top and a really lovely sort of fuzziness underneath, and that's done with, this is Silk Throster's waist, and this is what I've put under here. Just gives the illusion of little branches and leaves, and you can use it for bushes, you can use it for walls. I use the same stuff here but just a different colourway. You can stitch it down like this, but it's very frustrating, so I find the best way for something like trees is to layer it with a piece of organza on top. To hold it all in place, I'm going to use a combination of seed stitch, lazy daisy stitch, and then I've even done a couple of French knots. I'm still experimenting on colours, but all I do is I'll choose a thread, do a little bit of sewing, and then I think, oh, I'm going to choose a different colour now. Now, I wish this was a little bit more yellowy bright, because it's not quite as bright as I wanted it, but I do think I'm able to lift it with the sewing and the organza on top. Looking at this reference photo, I started to do a bit here, but it needs more. It needs something to come across here. Now, I could say I was going to keep this bit of blue sky here, and I think we will keep a little bit, but I think I'm going to just cover up this bit here and just keep pulling it out until you're happy with it. I think it comes from Oliver Twists. They do some amazing stuff. All of the weird bits and pieces I use, like the Throster's waist, things like this dyed silk velvet, you know, all of this stuff comes from Oliver Twists. I'm pretty sure that's where it comes from. So I've carried on doing the bluebells here too, and I think they're really taking effect. I layered up some little pieces of the organza. I've got one stitched in, but then I was bored of just stitching straight lines, so I went back to working on the trees last night. I think it's nearly time to put some flowers on. I was looking at the smallest ones, so knowing that these are the smallest flowers, and I think if I bring those stitches down longer, and I've got a lighter colour as well, and mix those into here, and then put this start here, about here, with the actual 3D bluebells, I think that'll look really good. But I have a bit of a problem in that this is too big and bulky and fluffy for this far back, so I need to do another tufted bit. So what I will use for that is the same colours that I was using yesterday for the stalks. I will mix together some of these. I might even get another green just so I can make it go a bit quicker, and I'll wrap that piece of paper again. So I'm going to go and do that first so it's got a chance to dry. Right, so we are at the exciting bit where we are putting on some three-dimensional pieces. So you can see I've put on this bit here, and that's actually on there now. I can't pull that off, and that one is on there, but these are loose. Now, I don't like using glue in things, and I will actually put a few stitches through these, but where these stems are so small, I think it's the only real way of getting it to stick down in the place where you want it, because it'd be quite hard to stitch through this. So I think I want this one here. I'm just going to trim this a bit more. Excuse my little bin holding my glue the wrong way up. And if you think haircut, so cutting into it rather than cutting it bluntly across, I can put on these little tufty bits. So what I'm going to do, put a little dot of glue on here, just one dot of glue, so we don't want to see any of it, and then gently place each stem in the glue, so sort of stick the end in. This is as far as I've got. It's pretty much finished. I've stitched on all of the tufting and the bluebells that I made. Some of these are quite heavy, so I think I might put some little anchoring stitches in. This is just taped to the canvas at the moment. It also shows me there's a couple of areas that need some attention, which I will point out. So this bit here to me looks like it's floating, so I just think it needs some stitches or something to just blur that bit. This bit here also needs something doing to it. And then also there's a piece here that needs stitching down that had got missed, but that's easy enough for me to do. So there's a few bits there that need attention before it's finished, and then there's odd bits that need picking off like that that shouldn't be there. On the whole, I have to say I'm really pleased with it. I think it looks really good. I'm really happy with it. All of the tufting and knotting and everything was definitely worthwhile. I think it really adds to the sort of three-dimensional quality of it. I might do a few more bits to it, so I might stitch in some green threads just every now and again in here. I might do. Looking at the reference photos, this is a reference photo, but on this photo you don't see any really green stalks or anything until you get right down here. So I don't know, I might just leave it how it is. I will live with it on here on the canvas, knowing what I've got to do to it, and then if I come in and I think, yeah, that will definitely improve it, then I will do it. Can we just have a moment for the leaves? I think it looks phenomenal on camera. It looks so good. It really gives the impression that I wanted. If I had about another 30 hours, I would probably do just leaves on their own. But I haven't, and I don't want it to be prohibitively expensive when I sell it. So I think the impression of the leaves is great. I think you get that perspective, like you could walk up this path to the stone wall and to the field beyond, and so, you know, it all works really well. So I hope you have learned some stuff about how you can make tapestry wool and embroidery thread and a few other bits and pieces look like all different things. And also just through like doing a little bit of embroidery, I mean, this is hardly taxing embroidery, it's literally straight stitches, can really add to the dimension of a picture, and that you can do this too. The main thing is just building it up in layers and choosing the scale of stuff. This is probably the biggest thing that adds to the scale of it. While I've been filming this, which has taken quite a bit longer, I'm sorry you've had to wait an extra week, we have reached 6,000 subscribers. I have reached 6,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And please, if you haven't subscribed but you've been watching my videos, and I know there are people out there that do that, please consider subscribing. It would really help me. Please consider liking the video if you found it interesting. I try and answer the comments, try and interact with you all, and I love the idea that you're going off and trying different bits and pieces. that's why I do this. So and obviously share the videos to anybody that you think would find them useful. At the end of the day, that's what they're there for. And thank you as always for all of the donations on Ko-fi. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for the 6,000. That's great, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye.